The stars disappeared at 0347 GMT. They didn't flicker. They didn't dim. They vanished, swallowed whole by something vast and unthinkable. In every hemisphere, humanity looked up and saw nothing. No moon, no constellations, just an unnatural void, smooth and black, pierced only by the gleam of alien metal. From the dark descended titanic shapes, monoliths with moving spines and shifting hulls, thousands of them, drifting into low orbit like shadows made solid. They blocked out the sun over cities. Seas surged. Birds fell silent. And across Earth's data grid, a signal took control. All screens turned to static, then bled into perfect darkness. Then it appeared, a face, or something like one. A mask, made of molten gold, its eyes deep red furnaces. Projected from a warship the size of a continent, it shimmered above Earth's major cities, dwarfing skyscrapers and mountains alike. 10 kilometers tall, its voice shattered windows as it spoke. Civilization 877 Terra, it intoned, syllables dropping like seismic waves. You now stand before the Air Imperial. You will lay down your weapons. You will surrender your world, or you will be unmade. In Times Square, people screamed. In Beijing, millions knelt, shaking. In the heart of the Amazon, a jaguar paused mid-hunt and looked skyward, growling at a god. Across Earth's defense network, alerts flared red, Galactic Invasion Protocol. Omega. But most systems refused to engage. The intruding fleet was too dense, too vast, too alien. Orbital telescopes showed tens of thousands of ships, some as large as small moons, others bristling with planetary-scale weapons. Their energy signatures pulsed with ancient code, unfathomable physics. It wasn't a declaration of war. It was a funeral notice. Humanity wasn't chosen. It was found. They'd seen it before in intercepted Imperial broadcasts, the ceremonial subjugation of a developing species. The face would appear. The countdown would begin. The sky would burn. No exceptions. No survivors, unless they bowed. And now Earth was next. But Earth was not silent. Deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain, in the command center known only to those with clearance. Theta Black, a woman stood. Vice Admiral Sarah Reyes, mid-40s, scar across her cheek from the Titan uprising. Her voice was low, calm, measured in a way that made seasoned officers stiffen. "Transmit," she said. Her message, short and deliberate, echoed from low Earth orbit to the Empire's flagship. "This is Earth, we do not kneel." Then she nodded to her comms officer. "Deploy the 73. Outside the command center, massive doors opened in Earth's crust. From under mountains, beneath oceans, and deep in the equatorial trench, ships emerged. Not fleets, not armadas, just 73 vessels. Some were ancient refits. Others were mining rigs hastily armed with plasma drills. A few glowed with tech too advanced to name. Compared to the Empire's dreadnoughts, they were gnats. Mismatched, under-armored, laughable, but they moved with purpose, with defiance. And above Earth, the face returned. It blinked. A pause. Was it amused? "You fight with toys? You're beneath my slaves. So be it. I accept your extinction." The projection faded. Silence. Then, light. Blinding white-hot bursts as the Empire opened fire, and from Earth's shaky fleet came no retreat, only. The stars disappeared at 0347 GMT. They weren't even painted the same color. Some of Earth's 73 ships still bore civilian logos, faded mining consortium emblems, obsolete serial codes, even rust. No gleaming hulls, no gravity shields. Just bolted-on armor, mismatched plating, and weapons that looked like they'd been scavenged from scrapyards. From orbit, the Empire's command AI scanned them in nanoseconds. Primitive fusion cores, manual targeting, no FTL capability, no coordination. It flagged Earth's resistance as token, and yet none of the human ships retreated. At the center of Earth's ragtag armada, a former ice hauler named Black, Halcyon turned slowly toward the incoming firestorm. A dozen enemy warcruisers locked onto it. Admiral Reyes watched from her chair, her eyes cold. Execute pattern ironfall. The Halcyon spun. Suddenly, its engines flared, not forward, but downward, diving into Earth's upper atmosphere. Pursuers followed. As plasma cannons lit up the sky, Reyes's command ship, the Talon's Reach, deployed what the Empire hadn't expected: orbital debris shields. The Empire's own bombardment scattered as kinetic traps, discarded satellites and prepositioned drone mines, detonated in synchronized bursts. Their weapons were disrupted, their aim thrown, and then Earth's fleet counterattacked. From the shadows of the moon, 6 stealth corvettes emerged. From deep-sea launch tubes, railgun barges rose. From the wreckage of their own satellites, Earth launched hell. A warcruiser screamed in its death throes as a kinetic slug tore through its hull at Mach 15. Another was boarded midair by a ship that rammed it at an impossible angle, venting soldiers in exosuits onto its skin. We're on. The hull! Drill's hot. Going for their bridge, just keep their eyes on the others. One of the Empire's commanders, a Varkan male named Ricket, watched in disbelief. His fleet had reduced entire star nations to ash in hours. Earth had been classified as low tier. Yet already 3 of his ships had gone dark, 2 more limped from bizarre engine sabotage, and a civilian freighter had just driven itself, with full cargo tanks, into a plasma engine array. The resulting fireball devoured 3 destroyers. He tapped a command console with trembling claws. Deploy sentry pods. Target their command vessel. End this farce. But the moment the pods launched, human ECMs activated, the Empire's tracking, data fuzzed, visual sensors blinded by sudden gamma bursts. Even the command pod's gravitational orientation was off by a fraction of a degree, just enough for their warheads to veer off course. Earth hadn't jammed them. Earth had lied to their physics. On board the Talon's Reach, Reyes whispered. Now. The atmosphere cracked like a whip as Interceptor 7, a one-man craft with a prototype warp drive coil, blinked into position behind an Imperial dreadnought. It fired once. A single slug, no bigger than a dinner plate, ripped through 4 meters of armor, passed through a reactor core, and exited the other side with molten edges. The dreadnought detonated. The light bathed Earth's night side in false dawn, then silence, momentary like a gasp. Target down, the interceptor pilot said, voice hoarse. Did I just kill a dreadnought solo? Reyes leaned forward. 72 left. Keep fighting. Up in orbit, the Empire's remaining fleet faltered for the first time in 1,000 years. They were not fighting primitives. They were not fighting children, they were fighting humans. And the humans weren't trying to win, they were just trying to... On the flagship throne of stars, deep in the command sanctum, silence reigned. The analysis room, a cathedral of quantum glass and starlight processors, ran trillions of calculations per second. It mapped probability flows, war outcomes, resistance, patterns, and it was breaking. Recompilation failed, the AI droned. Data contradiction exceeds threshold. Lord Strategos Arvax, 6-limbed and draped in ceremonial crimson, stared at the 3D map of the Sol system, twisting, glitching, refusing to stabilize. He slammed a clawed fist on the console. This is impossible, he growled. Their technology is a century behind. Correction, the AI interjected, unprompted. Their technology is not behind, it is obscured. Arvax blinked. Explain. Sensor ghosting. Hull laced with adaptive quantum foil. Systems appear rusted. In truth, layered deception. Earth has mastered optical falsification at every measurable spectrum. Across the fleet, new data reports arrived. Encrypted transmissions intercepted from human ships. What the Empire thought were crude command patterns were actually layered tactical traps. Their low-efficiency engines, overclocked microreactors masked by thermal scramblers, their targeting lag, an intentional delay, baiting Imperial fire into decoys. They hadn't been fighting with junk, they'd been fighting with masks, and now, the masks were slipping. On the outer rim of Jupiter's orbit, Imperial scouts encountered the Eidolon, Are, an ancient human satellite network they had dismissed as defunct. Too late, they realized it was live. It pulsed once. Every Imperial ship within 1.3 AU suffered immediate sensor blackouts. Internal systems scrambled. Navigation froze. For 90 seconds, the fleet was blind. Earth's fleet moved like sharks in a red tide. Inside a crippled Imperial cruiser, a boarding party stumbled into a sealed corridor. The walls were lined with pulsing neural mesh, pulsing like a heartbeat. "Looks like power routing," one muttered, "maybe shielding." Then the mesh rippled and screamed. The walls were alive. Biocircuitry fused with cloned brain matter. A targeting matrix made from once-living soldiers. Their memories encoded into weapons guidance systems. "Gods," the alien captain whispered, backing away. "They're fighting with their dead, and their dead were still thinking." In the Emperor's war chamber, a storm of voices argued across systems. High Command called for full orbital sterilization. Arvax, now visibly shaken, begged for caution. "We assumed they were primitive," he snapped. "We were wrong," a voice from the shadows interrupted. "Not just wrong." The chamber fell. Quiet. A towering figure stepped forward, cloaked, humanoid with glowing lines running across synthetic skin. A former spy master long embedded in the outer fringe now recalled. "They didn't hide their strength because they feared us," he said. "They hid it because they didn't want to use it." The words echoed. Back on Earth, in a mountain, facility known only as Vault Pyre, Rhea stood before a darkened screen behind multiple biometric locks. As she placed her palm against the final reader, a voice whispered behind her, "Do we really have to open it?" She didn't turn. "They're getting close," the door groaned. Cold air rushed from within. Inside, rows of sealed pods humming softly, human shapes within, each with glowing eyes, each wearing insignia from wars not taught in history books. Division Null. The ones never meant to wake. Above Earth, an Imperial dreadnought shook violently as an unfamiliar code breached its command core. Its final sensor log captured a broadcast in English, repeated once. "We showed you scraps, and you mistook it for the meal." Then it exploded from the inside. The Empire had underestimated Earth's quiet strength, but nothing compared to what was about to come. In the cold depths of the galaxy, beyond the reach of the Empire's carefully mapped star routes, the dread Horizon Station hummed to life. It was an ancient relic, forgotten, a graveyard of lost human technology, scattered far from known space. Built during a time before Earth was even aware of interstellar empires, it had sat dormant, broadcasting only faint signals. But those signals, they had never stopped, until now. At the edge of Imperial space, a routine patrol, a single scout cruiser, spotted the anomaly. At first, it appeared as a flicker on the scanner, barely distinguishable from cosmic radiation. Then, a short burst of data broke through. In a language that made the Empire's translation system glitch, a chilling message emerged. Earth remembers. Earth always remembers. The patrol ship's sensors began to scramble. All weapons systems went haywire. The ship's engines, already in disarray, struggled to keep momentum as it drifted closer to the signal's source. At that moment, the cruiser's AI pinged the command ship. Unknown coordinates detected. No known species in range. Transmission. Human origin. Probability. 100%. The officer in charge, Riquette's top aide, hesitated. Earth? Here? Impossible. Earth's fleet had been obliterated, at least that was the Imperial assumption. Then a series of deep, resonating tones filled the cruiser's bridge. Echoes of human voices. Thousands of voices. Old, tired, yet purposeful. Commanding. They whispered warnings of ancient wars, of lost soldiers who had never returned. Suddenly, the patrol ship was no longer alone. From the darkness of a nearby nebula, 6 ships emerged, silent as ghosts. Not human, not Empire. They were something else. They were Earth's exiles. Their hulls weren't just ships, they were worn, battle-scarred remnants of a humanity long thought extinct in the galaxy. Their sleek designs were a fusion of organic material and synthetic architecture, living ships driven by blood and bone. Each bore a unique insignia, long abandoned by Earth's current government, Division Exile. These were the lost fleets, the forgotten warriors who had once faced a threat far older than the Empire. They had been cast aside, exiled to the darkest corners of the universe during Earth's centuries of rebuilding, and now they were returning. The patrol ship scrambled to respond, but its systems were overwhelmed as the exiles' vessels emitted a surge of pulses, waves of ancient, forgotten technologies bypassing all modern sensors with ease. The exiles were not human by the standards the Empire knew. Their bodies, genetically modified, had been enhanced beyond comprehension. Their ships, a grotesque hybrid of biotech and brutal weaponry, rippled with the capacity to warp reality itself, distorting gravity, manipulating time in localized pockets, and phasing through space. They had survived longer than any human faction. Far longer than anyone in the galaxy had ever realized. Inside the bridge of the Exiles' flagship, a voice spoke. A voice that had not spoken in millennia. Activate the signal, and with that, the dormant relay beacon at the heart of dread. Horizon Station flared into a brilliant, terrifying pulse of light, sweeping across the galaxy. An ancient human signal, lost to time, broadcasted to every corner of the Empire. It was not a distress signal. It wasn't a call for help. It was a declaration. Humanity returns, and we never left. Within seconds, the Imperial fleet's entire communication network scrambled. Critical systems failed. The flagship's AI stumbled, unable to interpret the incoming data. Several ships were reported missing, pulled into pockets of twisted space, where even light could not follow. A few Imperial captains, shaking, whispered in fear. The humans hadn't just been hiding their strength. They had been waiting. And then, the first exile ship vanished from the scanners. It wasn't destroyed. It simply ceased to exist as though it had never been there at all. The exiles were not just a fleet. They were an infection. The first wave of Imperial panic came in the form of a transmission. A simple, nearly undecipherable series of words. Operation Echelon. But even before the fleet commanders could decode it, the Aegis protocol triggered. Deep within the Empire's military archives hidden in the encrypted vaults, a system had been built for situations like this. A last-ditch contingency. It was a failsafe that had been coded to recognize when Earth's defenses went beyond expected parameters. When a threat moved beyond the visible, it activated. Across Imperial space, in the deepest, most secretive sectors, a fleet, once thought to be buried in time, began to stir. The Aegis fleet. A fleet built by humans, long before they were consumed by history. A fleet buried within the fabric of Imperial infrastructure. A fleet that was, in essence, a prison. In the heart of the twilight graveyard, where thousands of ships lay in the cold vacuum of the galaxy, they awoke. Ancient machines, half fused with the forgotten corpses of soldiers who had spent centuries in stasis. This fleet was not a weapon. It was a response. And now, it was alive. On Earth, the faint hum of unrecorded frequencies filled the air. Low enough to be imperceptible to the average human ear, yet deep enough to vibrate the very bones of the planet. In the deserts of Nevada, a hidden base began to rumble with power. A secure door that hadn't opened in centuries lifted slowly. Inside, Division Null awoke. They had once been Earth's elite, unsanctioned, unknown, but crucial in the defense of humanity. These were the soldiers who had fought the Empire in the darkness of space and won, before being sealed away, forgotten. Until now, Admiral Reyes watched as the pods opened. The soldiers within, beings who should have been long dead, began to move with precision. Their faces were gaunt, but their eyes were sharp. Not a word was spoken. They knew what needed to be done. Reyes turned to her officer, voice steady but her hands gripping the console tight. Deploy them. Above Earth, the Imperial fleet was gathering itself again. Their once unshakable resolve was starting to fracture. They were being hunted, Not just by Earth's army, but by something far older, far darker. Something that wasn't supposed to exist. In the darkness of deep space on the edge of the Empire's domain, the Exile fleet continued its terrifying campaign. With each ship that vanished, the Empire's hold on the galaxy loosened. They were ghosts, haunting, slipping between dimensions, appearing only to leave a trace of destruction in their wake. Captain Riquet, his claws trembling with frustration, issued orders to retaliate, only to have them fall into chaos. His fleet was breaking down ship by ship. Systems failed in unpredictable ways. Some ships found themselves on the wrong side of gravity, suddenly pulled into a parallel dimension, only to emerge on the edge of a dying star. What were these ships? Humanity had always fought like this. Not fair, not according to anyone's rules. They never played by the same set of guidelines as the Empire. They invented their own. As the first ship of the Aegis fleet dropped out of the nearby wormhole, a battlecruiser called Valiant Light, it didn't fire on the Imperial ships directly. Instead, it released waves. Waves that were not of sound or light, but of thought. The psychic blast crashed across the Imperial fleet like a tidal wave. The Empire's best officers, commanders, and tacticians doubled over in pain as their minds were disrupted. Impossible strategies flooded their synapses, causing confusion. The very nature of combat was being rewritten. Reyes's voice echoed through the comms. They're learning faster than we can adapt. Let them. Across the battlefield, Imperial ships began to fragment, not because of explosions, but because their very nature was being undone. They weren't being destroyed by weapons. They were being unraveled by humanity's will. In the Empire's core, as the fleet's response grew frantic, a low voice rose in the War Council. We thought they were just primitive. The voice trembled. We thought we could crush them in a day. But humanity had always been the one enemy the Empire couldn't conquer. The first Imperial flagship, the Throne of Stars, had long been the pride of the Empire. Sleek, indomitable, capable of withstanding the very force of suns. It was not just a warship. It was a symbol of everything the Empire stood for. But now, it was a wreck. Its once glorious hull was cracked like glass, its weapons silenced, its internal systems running on nothing but instinct and desperation. Riquet stood before the shattered hollow map of the battlefield, the room dark except for the glowing remnants of his fleet's data. "Send a message to High Command," he said, his voice clipped with frustration. "We need reinforcements." But, even as the words left his lips, the transmission cut off. He had no idea how far Earth's influence reached. In the depths of the Talon's reach, Admiral Reyes felt a heavy silence press down on her. The vast majority of the Imperial fleet was now blind, disconnected, scattered in chaos. Every tactic they had trained on for millennia was turning against them. The Empire was no longer fighting a conventional war. They were in a psychic maze. "Bring up the aerial footage," Reyes ordered. The screens around her flickered to life, showing the human fleet moving in unison, each ship working like an organism, each human soldier a link in a vast, living chain. Even the most damaged ships seemed to glide effortlessly through the debris, powered not just by engines but by sheer will. The Exile's living warships were barely visible against the backdrop of stars. They phased in and out of reality, slipping between dimensions at will. But it wasn't the ships that were the problem. It was the humans aboard them. In a secure sector of Earth, hidden beneath miles of rock, a vast neural network had come to life. No longer a simple battlefield system, it had grown into something far more. It was the final contingency of human warfare, the collective mind. Once just a theory, once whispered about by scholars, the collective mind was humanity's answer to the impossible odds they faced in the cosmos. It was humanity's greatest weapon, and it was not a weapon anyone in the galaxy could prepare for. The collective mind was built by merging the consciousness of all human soldiers across the galaxy into one collective entity. Every battle, every sacrifice, every victory and loss was stored in the collective hive of human experience. No tactics were forgotten, no lessons were lost, and it was waking up. Across the galaxy, Humans who had been trained to fight, soldiers, tacticians, strategists, felt a strange stirring deep within their minds. A whispering call that began to pull them toward a singular purpose. Those stationed on distant outposts, even in remote sectors, suddenly found themselves instinctively knowing what to do. They could feel the war shifting in real time, every move of the enemy already anticipated. On the throne of stars, Riket's command center flickered again. A single communication flashed across his personal screen. Earth is not just fighting us, they're reprogramming war itself. The words were a warning, and they made Riket's blood run cold. He wasn't sure what it meant, but the implications were terrifying. A strange hum resonated through the air. It started as a low thrum but quickly became deafening. From outside the flagship, Riket could see a wall of light forming in the distance. A wall that wasn't just a flash of energy, but a tear in space itself. As the fabric of reality bent, it rippled in waves, distorting time. The fleet was being pulled toward it, inexorably. "What is that?" Riket shouted, panic seeping into his voice. "It's a rift, some kind of dimensional disruption." But it wasn't just a rift, it was a portal. And out of it, pouring like water, came the Aegis fleet. Not just warships, vessels unlike anything Imperial scientists had ever conceived. These ships bent and twisted the laws of physics. They weren't just powered by engines, they were alive. They were built from human consciousness, amplified and shaped by the collective mind, each ship a direct extension of the soldiers that had perished long ago. They were the dead, and they were coming back to life. The exiles and the Aegis fleet were now one. They were no longer a simple army. They were a singular force, uniting every human mind that had ever touched the battlefield. The Imperial fleet stood no chance against the onslaught. As the light from the portal grew brighter, Riket staggered back, his limbs frozen by terror. In the sky above Earth, the exiles' ships began to sing, a haunting, eerie melody, a song of death, rebirth, and resistance. They were not just fighting for Earth, they were fighting for the future of everything, and they were winning. The throne of stars was dying, not in the traditional sense, no hull breach, no explosion of engines. No, this was something far worse. The ship, the pride of the Empire, was being undone from the inside out. Riket stood at the center of the command room, his claws trembling with frustration. Every Imperial officer was glued to their stations, panic rising in their throats. "Get us out of here," Riket shouted. "We're not going to survive this unless we break through." The walls were warping. The very structure of the ship was twisting. Reality itself seemed to bend and shudder. The Aegis fleet had torn a rift in the fabric of space, and now it was pouring into the Imperial stronghold like a flood. The exiles and the Aegis had become one, a unified force, their warships woven together in a seamless display of living, breathing terror. They had turned the laws of the universe into weapons, manipulating gravity, bending time, and folding space itself. The Imperial ships, for all their strength and firepower, couldn't fight what they couldn't understand. "Riket," the Imperial fleet's lead engineer whispered fear in his voice. "We've never seen anything like this. The laws of physics, they're collapsing." He didn't finish his sentence. The rest of the bridge crew could feel it, the strange hum that had begun to infiltrate their minds. It wasn't a sound. It was a thought slipping through their consciousness, a human whisper, more real than any words they'd ever heard. "We are the survivors, and we will never be your prey." Above Earth, the battle had become a nightmare. The exiles had stopped fighting according to any rules the Empire had ever known. They didn't need weapons. They rewrote the battlefield itself. Ships began disappearing, not destroyed, but simply vanishing from existence, only to appear in new locations. Exiles' warships phased through matter, appearing in the hearts of Imperial lines, ripping them apart from within. One after another, Imperial commanders went silent as their minds were suddenly assaulted, wrested from their bodies. The collective mind was reaching into their thoughts, unraveling their strategic plans before they even had a chance to deploy them. What was worse was that the Aegis fleet had mastered the ancient art of psychic warfare, a weapon the Empire had long dismissed as primitive. But it was the one thing the Empire had no defense against. Humanity's mind was its greatest weapon, and now it was operating at full capacity. From the Talon's reach, Admiral Reyes watched the chaos unfold. She stood before a massive holo display showing the once mighty Imperial fleet in ruins, their remaining ships retreating toward the edge of known space. The rift in reality was widening, swallowing anything in its path. Earth's forces had reached the tipping point. The Empire was breaking apart. But the battle wasn't over. The Empire's commanders were scrambling, calling for reinforcements, deploying their last line of defense. Inside the rift, a figure sat motionless in a meditative position. It was a human, a leader, one of Earth's oldest warriors, known only as the Warden. The Warden's eyes opened, but they were not human eyes anymore. They were the eyes of someone who had seen countless centuries of warfare, someone who had lived through Earth's darkest hours. The collective mind had taken him beyond the human realm, transcending the limitations of his physical form. He was now the voice of humanity's ancient will. "We cannot allow the Empire to simply fade into the void," the Warden said, his voice not just audible but resonating through every exile ship, through every human soldier connected to the collective. The time has come for humanity to make its final statement. On the throne of stars, Riket felt a sudden pressure in his chest, a crushing weight, like the air itself had turned to lead. His vision blurred. The Aegis fleet had found him. He turned to face his officers, but none of them spoke. They were no longer human. They were part of the mind. They were humanity's consciousness. And then, the impossible happened. The rift closed, not with a burst of light or a cataclysmic explosion, but with a whisper. The fleet ceased to exist. For a split second, the bridge of the Throne of Stars felt utterly empty. The exiles were gone. The Aegis fleet had vanished. "Is it over?" Riket whispered, but his words were swallowed by the void. The reality around him seemed to collapse into stillness, as though the universe itself had come to a stop. The battle was not won in the skies, it was won in their minds. And in that moment, humanity did what it always did: adapt. The Empire had been defeated, not by force, not by firepower, but by humanity's ability to evolve, to reshape the very foundation of existence itself. The final gamble had been made. Earth had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same. The galaxy was silent. For the first time in millennia, the vast expanse of space seemed to hold its breath. The once mighty Empire had retreated, their ships scattered across the outer rim, their forces crumbling into irrelevance. The rift in space that had consumed their strongest fleet now seemed like a fading memory, as though the universe itself had closed its eyes and allowed them to disappear into nothing. For all their might, for all their advanced technology, the Empire had been reduced to a footnote in the face of humanity's unimaginable evolution. On Earth, the final command had been given. The collective mind, which had once been a weapon, was now a legacy, a monument to humanity's resilience, a bridge between the living and the lost. Humanity was no longer just a species. It had become something greater, a force that could shape and bend reality itself, and the galaxy was forced to reckon with it. In the command center of the Imperial remnants, now little more than an abandoned wreck, Riket stood before a shattered display screen. His vision swam, his mind assaulted by the remnants of the psychic wave that had crashed against him during the battle. He was broken, but not just physically. The collective consciousness of Earth had left an indelible mark on the Empire's mind. On Riket's mind, the exile's ship had warped his perception of reality. His thoughts felt fragmented, like pieces of a puzzle scattered across the floor. He had known fear before, but this was something far worse. Existential dread. The Empire had always been a bulwark against the unknown, a force that knew no true rival. But now, with Earth's awakening, they were left with nothing but a chilling truth. The Empire was no longer the apex predator in the galaxy. Above Earth, the exile fleet slowly faded from view. The ships, not destroyed but simply gone, returned to the depths of space from which they had emerged. Their purpose had been fulfilled. But Earth wasn't retreating. It wasn't hiding. It was changing. From the ancient archives buried deep beneath the surface of the planet, human minds now connected as one looked toward the future. They saw the universe not as a war to be fought, but as a world to be remade. The people of Earth no longer sought dominance. No, their eyes were fixed on something far greater: balance. The Empire's reign was over, but the universe's equilibrium was in their hands now. And in that quiet moment of peace, a single thought echoed across every human mind: we are the ones who decide what comes next. As the Imperial fleet dwindled into nothingness, messages began to pour in from across the galaxy, from long-lost colonies, from former allies, from forgotten worlds. They were asking one question: what comes next for us? The Empire had promised them order. It had promised control. But it was Earth that now held the power, and the galaxy was watching. In the heart of the Talon's reach, Admiral Reyes stood alone, her back to the view of Earth. She had witnessed the final moments of the battle, the moment when humanity had transformed, not into conquerors but into something far more dangerous, a force for change. She felt a strange peace settle over her, but it was tainted by the knowledge of what had just been unleashed. Humanity's evolution had shattered everything. "Admiral," a voice called from the doorway. Reyes turned, her face etched with the fatigue of a war that had reshaped the universe. "We've been contacted." She raised an eyebrow. "By whom?" "Everyone," the officer replied. "The entire galaxy. They all want to know, what are we now?" Reyes looked back at Earth, its blue and white surface glowing in the distance. The question was simple, but the answer would be anything but. On Earth, the collective human consciousness began to broadcast a single message across the stars, one that rippled outward, passing through the remnants of the Empire's communications, slipping into the void and beyond. We are humanity, and we are here to shape a new era. It wasn't a message of dominance, it wasn't a message of power. It was a promise, one of unity, of evolution, and of a future defined by the collective will of a species that could bend reality to its command. Humanity had been tested, had fought against the galaxy's greatest empires. And it had won, not through might but through its will to survive and to adapt. The Empire had underestimated them, dismissed them as primitive. And now, the galaxy knew the true nature of humanity. It wasn't their technology that made them powerful. It wasn't their numbers that made them strong. It was their ability to change, to evolve, to shape the universe. And the universe, all of it, would never be the same again. The war had ended. The Empire had fallen, and the future belonged